Let's acknowledge the good friends of the Loft Party Podcast. The Majestic Restaurant and Pendergast Club, 931 Broadway in Kansas City, Missouri. The J. Rieger Kansas City Distillery. Oh, so good. Now onto our regularly scheduled program.
Just not getting it.
Welcome everybody out there. The Good Times with Good People Company presents the Loft Party Podcast, where it is always about good times, good people, and good talk. Please subscribe to the Loft Party Podcast on YouTube, Facebook, and SoundCloud. Please tell a friend you have received your invitation and welcome to the party. I'm your host and moderator, Rio, and let's introduce today's panel. We have our returning champions, Chris O'Connor. Of course, he's the co-owner of Liquid 9 Broadcast Media Production. And Dave Elliott, we call him Big Dave. He's the owner of C&P Construction. And today on the Loft Party Podcast, we're going to make Halloween great again.
I'm here
No, wait.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
I was coming back around. But since she couldn't wait, and the anonymous female, because she doesn't want you to know her name. Impatient.
Yeah.
So today, we're going to make Hollywood. Because that's what you do with that spritz spray. We're going to make Halloween great again, a.k.a. this is getting scary. First thing is everybody will notice, don't have to go all the way through it, but I thought it was really interesting that, and I didn't notice it until much later in the day, that on the website for NPR, they put full transcripts of all of the debates after each debate, with a full fact check on every debate. I just was like, wow, that is amazing. So I printed out the last debate, and that's to say, we definitely don't have to go all the way through it. But I thought the fact that people are fact checking on this level bodes well for our democracy and our electorate. Did they tally? I don't think they did a tally. I think they literally went phrase by phrase, statement by statement, and the things that needed fact checking, there's underlines, and then there's a box that is what they fact checked. Is what the result of the fact check. So I thought it was really interesting. It seems as if it doesn't get into like this is a lie versus this is this was true versus this is a lie until seems like a little bit into the debate. A lot of it is you said this or I said this even, and they did some clarifyings on a lot of what they said, because it was a ton of stuff that wasn't a fib. It was so
vague.
Yeah, so vague that instead of fact checking, like, well, that was a lie, they were just like, okay, this is really what happened here, or this is really what was said in this instance. And I thought that was really interesting. I did notice as it got a little further along that they did start doing some true falses. And some stuff, that I didn't necessarily, I guess want to be, true or false, either one. I realized that, okay, that had a morsel of truth in it, or, okay, that sounded like a complete load of bull crap, but I guess that was at least half true, And so I just more than anything else, I thought it was really interesting that they were going through the debate to this level, and really either true or falsing or really clarifying statements. Because I think there's still a lot of the electorate that's just in their.
Did you feel NPR was pretty impartial?
It seemed as if they were
NPR?
Yeah, it seemed as if they were just like, okay, this is it. This is just it. You know, like there was plenty of times where, you know, like Trump said something and they were like, actually he did do that and to this degree, and you know, and I was like, oh, okay, you know, so it didn't seem like it was a bunch of, well, here's all the times, you know, Trump lied and, you know, glowing truths about Hillary. It was like there were times during both of, you know, their question and answer periods that they both said stuff that was not necessarily a lie, but it was definitely incomplete. And then there was other times that what they said was it was true, but it was just it was so vague that they needed to give some reference to what it is that they were actually really talking about. You know, there was a point I remember reading that Trump said he had 20 people that he was going to be nominating. He had a 20-person list for nominating for the court.
We had 20 possible candidates for this.
Right, and so they actually were saying that yes, he really does have 20 people, and and this is to the degree that I mean, I think what he said is that he had nominated 20, but of course he's not in a position to nominate anything yet. So so it wasn't a lie. It was just wording was slightly off, and
all of Trump's wording is going to be slightly off because he's off the cuff, and I don't know. It's I struggle with Trump like a lot of people, but I think it has to be said is that he's out there saying what he thinks for the most part. If he didn't get derailed all the time on wanting to insult people or answer to insults, he'd be a very different type of candidate, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I think if
he gets rattled very easy, and I think that is a major issue for him, because whether he means what he's saying or not, it comes out, and it comes out in a bad way.
Yep.
And right or wrong, it just sounds like a bratty kid, and he doesn't know how to deal with it. The first thing you do is you lash out.
One of the most important things I think I do in business is that every once in a while you're going to get that phone call where maybe there's two sides of the story, maybe it's an all shit phone call.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like to let it go to voicemail.
Yeah, give yourself time to
give myself time to think, get the facts, make a few phone calls, find out who's really bullshitting who yet. Mm-hmm. Or if it is not shit, okay.
Yeah. And then
how am I going to get this fixed? So when I come at them, I have a solution to the problem. They may yell at me when I come back at them, but I'm going to also say, all right, this is what I'm going to do. These are my options. This is what I can do for you. This is how we'll take care of it. And I think Mr. Trump reacted that way a little bit better.
Yeah.
And listened to some of his advisors. I don't think he does, though. I think he just goes, boom.
Well,
this is me, and then goes, boom.
Yeah, I think they listen. I think he listens, and then
and then something gets under his skin.
He's got to go.
Because you can always see when it happens. He's very calm and collected, and then it doesn't really matter who it is, because he's gone after Clinton, he's gone after a reporter, he's gone after a moderator. It just something, a word, or the way they say it, it just gets him, and immediately he's back to.
And it's bada bing, here we go.
Here we go. Exactly.
You got to admit, though, it's in some ways, though, even though it may make your teeth grate a little bit, it is entertaining.
Now, I will say this is probably the best show on television. The problem is that we're trying to elect president and not just watch entertaining TV, and that's the problem.
Like, maybe he should truly just be on TV. like
he's entertaining as all get out to watch, but I don't know if I want to watch him be the president. I think that's where the problem lies.
It's hard to say, you know.
You have a pretty unique kind of perspective in general, Chris, about what being on the media side. What do you think about the fact that, and it's probably not just NPR, but that there are sites and whatever that are fact checking on this level?
I think fact checking is all you come into it with a perspective that you're trying to generally either prove or disprove. I don't know that it's necessarily where people go fact checking. I don't know that you still don't have an agenda, and again, I also think there's a million ways to phrase things. My dad used to say if the American and a Russian ran a race and the American won, the Russian newspaper would say our guy came in second, when the American came in second to last.
Right.
So they're both true statements, and it's
true.
literally just how you want to interpret it. Everybody has a point of view that they come at things with, and that's what I think it's hard.
Yeah.
So even when we're talking, and again, NPR always had a reasonably liberal agenda. Wall Street Journal's always had a very conservative agenda. You got clearly MSNBC and Fox, and when they start talking about their fact checking, I'm like, I don't buy that shit.
I watch
PolitiFact.
Yeah, PolitiFact seems to be one of the very few that I've found has won awards for being impartial. And so I tend to, which is the reason why discovering that like NPR and sites were fact checking on this level was like, oh, okay. Because I tend to watch, okay, what is the truth? Because you got to have at least one entity that you can go to. Because of course, if you go to a liberal source and then you go to a conservative source, they'll generally tell you two different things, which leaves you,
somewhere in the middle.
It was, and thus is the problem. So I tend to try to find at least that one source that, doesn't seem to care, and they just want you to have, unscrubbed data.
And, I would like to think maybe PolitiFact, so I don't know.
Which is why.
But maybe they got some conservative people, maybe they got some liberal people, some folks in the middle. Maybe they're kind of like this panel where they actually sit down, have discussions, and hash things out.
They actually.
And then try to put out the best information possible.
Yeah, they actually go back and look at the way things were said, and like there's been things that they.
Journalism.
Yeah.
Oh.
Wow.
Don't rare thing anymore.
Wow.
It's again, I think if you look at the history of politics in the United States, especially when it comes to what we want to call journalism, there was no such thing as objective journalism because they realized it's a fallacy. You cannot possibly be objective. It just doesn't work that way.
I don't know. I
think there's something those are blatant lies, and you can get those pretty easily.
Well,
then there's a lot of things where it's like, well, you're splitting hairs and saying half truths and things like for your case and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I do agree that
they've been good about. I don't know if you guys have watched any of that, but PolitiFact has been really good about saying, this is mostly true.
Sure.
Maybe this part of it, you could maybe say was wrong.
Yeah,
or they're like, no, it was absolutely, this was completely false. I mean, they hadn't really had a lot of like liar, liar, pants on fire shit.
Yeah. Which the funny thing is, I remember, and I'm not necessarily nostalgic for the time, but I definitely remember when I was really young, and you had the Walter Cronkites and there was just those two or three news anchors that like you said, it was maybe
You didn't know what they personally felt?
I'm sure they had.
Well, we know that Walter Cronkite did. He was very liberal, but he didn't necessarily exhibit that as much in his news as what some of the casters do
Which
nowadays.
to me is what real journalists, real reporters do. Like they
Edmund
don't
Murrow
spin it in
Edwin
there.
Murrow. Yeah, I mean these are guys that were able to at least appear impartial.
The appearance is what you can rest your hat on.
I don't think any of them were impartial.
They were still entertainers for us.
That goes back to Hillary's comment of, and maybe she didn't mean it this way, but you have one face in public and one face in private. And when you're public facing, you may not always personally feel the way that you feel about things that you're talking about.
Yes.
Private being the main trouble for Hillary. that has been her downfall. She should have stayed a lot more public.
Which I do suppose brings us out of fact checking into the next part of fact checking, which the FBI. Let me pause here and say. There have been many people who have thought that Anthony Weiner's wiener was going to be the end of the world. And it is very possible that Anthony Weiner's wiener will actually be the end of the American democracy, if not the world. This is the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. I was like, so the FBI is going to reopen the investigation because Anthony Weiner.
They're not reopening the original investigation. They're opening an investigation.
The investigation never closed.
Right.
I mean, that's one of the misleading things that people think is that they never actually did close the investigation.
No, So I think the thing that kills me is, so Anthony Weiner's sending pics to what they think is an underage girl.
Looking at 50 years, you realize that.
Yeah. And so they're on his computer looking for all the dick pics and who he sends them to, and find that his estranged wife used that computer from time to time, emailing Hillary, found a bunch of Hillary emails.
They said, as of right now, the emails that they've seen she hasn't been involved in them at all. That's been part of the issue. So the FBI said we're doing this, but they hadn't seen the emails. They hadn't there was nothing showing that she was a recipient of any of the emails. They were talking about her in the emails.
What the FBI has right now is they develop a program because there's such a massive amount of emails on this particular computer, and to be able to look for certain words or certain emails, to where they're able to take the massive amount and come down to a smaller amount.
Right.
But the problem is right now is that then it has to go to what basically is a C method. So they literally have to look at it, and then they have to say, well, that could possibly be a classified email. Then they have to contact the agency that possible classified email came from to see if it was classified at the time it was sent. So this is going to take a little while. The thing I find interesting here is that I've listened to several different sources on it. I've read a little bit on. There's some rumbling in the lower ranks of the DOJ even. There's also a lot of rumbling in the FBI that they felt like they had the goods. And I think James Comey, I think they may even, who knows, this is total speculation. I'm not going to even come anywhere close to think I'm that damn smart. But I think James Comey kind of got dissed on. And somebody may have turned around and pissed him off somehow. And then he finally said, enough is enough.
Well, I think I kind of disagree with that a little bit. I think it's more of he's been under pressure since he said he wasn't going to. Everything that he's done with this, he personally has done with this case, has been out of character for the FBI in general. And they've reported on that.
For James Comey.
Yeah, for him,
Well,
for him, and
I
for
don't
the
know
agency.
because I don't know enough about him to speak on that. But
Supposed
the
to have a pretty high
FBI's
integrity.
But the FBI's general practice isn't to have press conferences on ongoing,
Right.
and he's done it 2 or 3 times now.
And that's very strange to me also. There's a lot of little things there that are very strange. And I don't know, maybe people make more of it. The Bill Clinton meeting, the Loretta Lynch, even if it was a friendly visit, and we wouldn't know one way or the other,
Yeah.
I'm not going to stand there and claim it was one way or the other.
Right.
3 days before it comes out, hey man, that stinks.
Yeah.
That stinks. That's bad. If anything, it was bad judgment. Just plain serious bad judgment.
Yeah.
You're pitting smoke there. When there's smoke, there's usually fire.
Well, you know, this is the funny thing that and I've said this before about the Clintons in general. Like shit for as long as I can remember,
The Clinton machine.
yeah, they have been under some investigation or another. There's always a ton of smoke. They never find any flames.
I don't know how they do it.
Which, to me, doesn't necessarily say you have bad enough judgment that I don't want you as president, but somebody's making some bad decisions because you make enough decisions to kick up enough smoke all the time.
All the time.
I'm like, and once again, being from Chicago, knowing how crooked politics can be, because our
daily politics.
yeah, and our last 3 governors are in prison.
There they are.
So I know how crooked politics can be, but every time there has been smoke, we found flames somewhere.
Yes.
And the thing with the Clintons is, and trust me, the Daily Machine is the best at it.
Oh God, yes.
Oh,
They were
the
unreal.
Clintons aren't nearly as good as the Daily Machine is at this politics thing.
They took something right out of Boss Pendergast's book there.
Man,
And they learned well from the
They've
boss.
done some amazingly gangster things at the Daily Machine and gotten right. And hey, not only did the gangster thing in almost broad daylight, and say, hey, what you gonna do? you gonna sue me? You gonna take me to jail? What you gonna do? And what happens is no.
What do you mean the Daily Machine? What do you mean?
The Daily Family ran Chicago.
Oh,
forever.
that's their last name.
Yes, their last name.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
We had that
and
conversation.
there's a daily in. Is he a senator or in Congress right now?
Heck, they started back in
I don't
the
know.
50s, didn't they?
Yeah, no, I'm thinking the one daily that's actually still in politics right now. He's in Congress or the Senate. I think he's in Congress. But it's just been amazing. Like Pop Daily, he was, the original,
Patriot.
political boss.
Yeah. the
Like,
patriot.
they say that there was a call put out to him that got the last minute votes that put Kennedy in office because he was able to sway the entire union system to.
They had dead people voting. The amount of dead people that voted in Chicago in that election.
I could once again,
It was amazing.
being from Chicago, I know how crooked it can get, and I know how good a crooked politician can be at being crooked. And the Clintons just don't, from what I have grown up seeing, they just don't rise to that level. Not saying that they've never done anything crooked,
Well, they don't
but I don't see them being good enough to never the fire to never get caught.
That's my point, is that sometimes they're almost amateurish.
Exactly. Like, I remember after 9/11.
I don't know what the money and things are behind them that are able to make them
Yeah.
bail out of stuff. Who to be able to bail out of stuff like that, I'll give Slick Willie one thing. He's a smart dude.
Hey, man. Look,
I mean, he's a Rhodes Scholar. Don't
It's
ever
not what you
underestimate
know,
Bill
it's who
Clinton's
you know.
intelligence.
yeah, look, after...
I don't think his wife is as intelligent as he is.
I
don't
think she's as
a
intelligent.
stupid
I don't
woman.
think she is as slick. I don't think she knows how.
I think she's neither. She failed the bar twice in D.C. And had to pass it in Arkansas. And if you look at the rise of her in her career, just so happened she got promoted at every law firm she was at as soon as he got elected to higher and higher office. So there's a little more there than just meets the eye.
Yeah.
Once again, a lot of smoke.
Exactly.
But people, let's
But I will say
people
this.
pay for influence.
But I will
They
say
do.
this. I will say
That's
this.
true. People pay for influence.
And which is very true. I mean, actually, I just saw a documentary on Netflix, and I was saying as soon as we get an opportunity, I want the Anonymous Female and I to both watch it. It was a documentary with Noam Chomsky, and he was. It was basically it's called the Requiem of the American Dream. And it's basically the 10-step plan how you kind of pacify and control a democratic society. And it is super scary that basically we live in the system, because when the founding fathers decided that this was going to be a democracy, the question of, okay, democracy happens one of two ways. Either you make sure that the poor and more underprivileged aren't as poor and underprivileged, so that they feel okay about contributing to the system. The rich may not be 400 times richer, but you may be 100 times richer than your employees. Or the other way, and Aristotle actually said that, or the other way is to lessen democracy itself. And you have to chip away at little things, keep people kind of divided on little things, so that they're not focused on the fact that money is feeding power, is feeding money, is feeding power. And the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. And if you say something or you kind of uprise a little bit, we'll figure out ways to kind of tamp that down, so that money feeds power, feeds money, feeds power, and which is really the direction America decided to take. Versus, so one way sounds more socialist, one way sounds exactly like the system we have, because it is the system we have. And I'm not going to necessarily say that either way is wrong. I'm going to leave that up to our listeners out there to figure out for themselves and say what they believe. But it was super interesting. Netflix, Requiem for the American Dream. Please check that out if you get the opportunity.
Socrates called democracy the absolute worst form of government you could ever have. On the scale of governments, he said it was the absolute worst, because there's no search for truth, it's too manipulable, and it has nothing to do with morality. It literally just has to do with whichever way the wind's blowing, and you can trick people into voting for what.
Yeah.
And was very adamant about it. But and again, that's from a philosophical perspective. You could also turn around and make the argument, well, the American experiment with democracy has turned out to be pretty freaking great. So there's maybe that argument on the flip side. But it's not about a search for truth. It's literally just how many people can you convince to be on your side. How many times in the last, let's even cut it down to 16 years. Yeah. How many times have you seen Americans make policy based on reactionary, scared tactics, starting with George Bush convincing somehow everybody that Iraq had something to do with 9/11. We completely overreacted. People now who want to backtrack from the war forget that every poll showed that 98% of all Americans were ready to go to war with Iraq.
Yeah.
They had zero problem with it.
Yeah.
We
got mad and wanted to fight somebody.
Only one person in the entire Congress decided not to vote for it.
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders, wasn't it?
Maybe. It could have been.
I think it was Bernie
I
Sanders.
thought,
And then I love that
but
Barack
I thought
Obama.
McCain didn't.
No, McCain.
He
Absolutely.
did to begin with.
But people start doing this revisionist history when things go bad, and we have a history of doing this. I've said this before on the podcast. In 1943, over 50% of Americans wanted to sue Nazi Germany for peace at any cost. And where's the greatest generation? Oh my God, this is great. Well, no.
Yeah.
Not the greatest generation. And congratulations, they fought fucking hard and awesome. Glad we didn't pull out, but more than half the country wanted to. You know, that doesn't strike me as the greatest generation by any stretch. It strikes me as a normal generation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the thing I find about the second theory of democracy, with power feeding power, is that that's gone on so long now.
Yeah.
That's what's fueled Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump.
Exactly. Which was a conclusion that it eventually came to. That
They
you eventually make the electorate so angry. You get to the point where you're making reactionary decisions and you're electing people from a reactionary standpoint rather than an intellectual standpoint. You're voting to go to wars because you're angry on a level that you don't even necessarily even recognize anymore. Because because it's just difficult for the waitress with 2 kids trying to pull double shifts to just live, but that is due to the policies that you're voting for when you put people in office and the cycle goes around.
Yep.
I just thought it was really interesting that without even seeing the documentary, that you both touched on one of the points of the 10-point plan of how you do this, and I thought it was just really interesting and well done, and he was basically saying that there's only been one actual decade that has been truly transformative in American policy and practice, and then they've done everything in their power since that decade to never let that decade happen again. But because they're doing everything in their power not to go back there, we're going to go back there. Mm-hmm. And of course that decade was the 60s when everybody was fighting in the streets for their rights and forcing the government to do something. And historically, if I don't care what country it is, if you actually want the government to do something, people gotta give a damn.
You have to uprise.
You gotta fight.
Those protests
for your
meant
right.
nothing. What happened was really the Vietnam War got out of hand, and people all of a sudden demanded a change. The protests didn't do shit. The 1% movement thing, all that bullshit, that didn't change anything. I mean, everybody thinks protests are, these big deals, and I applaud people for, getting out there and fighting for what they think, or at least demonstrating for what they think is right. The vast majority of the time, it's young kids who don't vote anyway, probably aren't even registered, to be perfectly honest, who think they know what the hell they're talking about, but they really don't. Nobody in this country is a policy wonk except for the handful of people that really run the inner circle of this country. And my problem is not with election time.
Yeah.
It's the 4 years that pass in between election time when we don't give a shit what happens. We don't pay attention to the laws. We don't pay anything.
Oh yeah, nobody goes and votes in their local elections.
Well, I think one of the things that stirred more shit in the Vietnam War, it became obvious after some of the soldiers started coming back that they weren't fighting the war to win. They were fighting the war to be an economic machine, to propagate the defense contractors so that they made money, because You go back and read about the Vietnam War, and they had many chances to win it. They actually had it won at times, and they pulled right back and didn't go after it. And I think America had, in the '60s, and I was a child of the '60s.
Sure.
Still had, we had the Cold War going on every night. You listen to Waldo Cronkite every night to find out what was going on in the Cold War. We watched TV as a family every night.
Sure. So do we.
Yeah, you're gonna pay attention to that.
Well, we
But
did
it got
in
to
the
the point
70s
where
too.
they aren't fighting the war to win. And I think that really upset a whole lot of people and saying, no, come on, if you're not gonna fight to win, bring the boys home.
And again, I think this is a problem that we have now, which is America does not want to be seen as taking over or being a colonial power and taking over.
They won't be
countries.
imperialist.
Yeah, and to some degree, we were there to support Southern Vietnam and try to keep them from becoming communist. And all the way back to the Truman Doctrine. Then the French came in and fucked up Vietnam really bad. And all of a sudden you have this incredibly strong, very tricky underground movement. So yeah, we killed a lot more Vietnamese than they did of us. I mean, really, if you look back at that war, I think we had 350,000 casualties in that war, which is a tremendously huge amount in a historical context. But
that's also the first war where the media got in there and was embedded very strong besides World War II. And started crying out against killing civilians.
Yeah, and that.
Where in World War II that didn't matter. We were going to wipe out the Nazis.
Wiping out cities.
Whatever happened. Look at Dusseldorf and just bombed to smithereens.
We blew up an entire city in Germany and didn't fucking care who was in the mix.
We're going to win the war.
Yep.
And that was their attitude. And I think by the time Vietnam got there, even Korea somewhat was that case. That was really the start of it.
Well, I think people realized Korea was a stalemate once, Truman had to fire MacArthur. Like, that war was already done, and then MacArthur, being the jackass that he was, completely went across the 40th parallel and got the Chinese involved. And all of a sudden, you're not looking at a war against North Korea, you're looking at a war against China, and they just started flooding into the country and pushed us way back. I mean, it was a fucking fight to get back to the 40th parallel.
I'm reading a book right now about North Korea and some things like that, and it is hard to read. In fact, I got to a bad part last night about what their basically concentration camps are, their labor camps, and what they do to people. I had some bad dreams last night, and because it disturbed me after I read it enough to where it got to my head.
With you, yeah.
These are bad people. I mean, they're really bad people. And it's too bad that we couldn't have had a unified Korea. If they would have done their job, we could have had that.
Well, the most beautiful picture you can ever look at is a satellite image at night of the Korean Peninsula. And literally at the 48th parallel, south of it, you see lights, bustling cities, Samsung, LG, everything else is down there. They're an electronic hub of the universe. And then you look at the north side, not a single light.
It's dark.
You have to look for it. It's just ridiculous.
They turn their electricity off every night.
Yeah, it's
sometimes during the day.
That's insane.
Why do they do that? Well, I mean, that's off topic.
They have no money. I mean, you have China who's literally just floating that country. So that's it.
Basically.
Anyway, got off a little bit off subject there, but it all kind of tied in together with some different things,
I think it ties in together very, very strongly in the sense that Americans do not pay attention except for maybe 8 to 12 weeks before presidential election, at which point you're not really listening to facts, you're listening to what you already want to believe in. And trying to be validated in your thoughts, and not going into it. I know so many people who are hardliner Republicans who vote all Republican regardless, all Democrat regardless. I'm like, you know what?
So polarized.
You're telling me that really you can't find anything to like about the other party at any point? Like nothing?
I mean, there's been times that I've voted that I don't think I've ever just voted straight. Like, you go in, you hit the one.
I never have.
I don't think I ever have.
There's a lot of people that do.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
it's
a lot
just,
of people
never have.
I feel like, to your point, that's very ill-informed or uninformed or whatever you want to call it, you know.
Well, this is also a good time for me to re-announce my candidacy for the Socialist Conservative Party. Big Dave Elliott, yes, you know, I'm looking for at least 25 votes, so, you know, vote for me, thank you.
I mean, I do believe if you look at the two parties, there's an inherent contradiction in both of them.
Yeah.
Which is Democrats say you can do anything you want and we don't care. Also, we would love your tax money to pay for it. And Republicans don't want you to do anything, you know, but they want you to be able to keep all your money to yourself. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
So
I mean,
somewhere in the middle, obviously, is the answer.
I mean, truly, there's that's the inherent contradiction.
Yeah.
So, which baffles me when you do get straight party ticket voters. I mean, you really are okay with both sides of what is clearly a discrepancy in logic. It makes no sense.
I got a prediction, and I'll be interested to see if I'm right in 4 years. You are going to see a moderate candidate come out that's going to expound social values that have to be done to take care of the basic folks.
Yeah.
But yet still say, we are a capitalist, democratic society, and this is what we're going to do. And they have that nice mix. I think if anybody really came out and had the right ideas, Big Dave Elliott.
They definitely can't use the word social anything if they
but I
to.
think they can. I think that can. Believe it or not, I sat beside Eric Greitens, the gubernatorial candidate for Missouri, which is kind of like
Eric
Trump in a way.
Right.
I mean, he's an outsider, never been in office before, and I was truly amazed at how many times he said, look, we can't have, and even though it's a federal program, we can't have people working 23 hours a week because they can't work any more than that because they get taken off their supplement. We have to find ways to bring things forward, which is, I was able to bring my example in 2013 where I hired 13 inner city boys, and I couldn't get any of them to work more than 23 hours, and it kind of freaked me out at first. So why can't I get these guys to come to work? A couple of pretty good workers, a couple of them were smart enough kids to figure out, a couple of them weren't, a couple of them were just, they had no business being out there. But I couldn't get them to work. So, I said to him, you're going to pay them a supplement anyway. Tell them that if they get a 40-hour-a-week job, we're going to give you that supplement along with your 40-hour-a-week job for 6 months. And after 6 months, this is your opportunity to get on your feet. You get a decent ride, get a decent place to live. You don't get nothing for 6 more months. Well, the question from one of my friends said, well, what if they don't make it? What if they fall through the cracks? Okay, well, that's a good point. But that's where the union missions, the Catholic charities, the church charities would have to fall into place. And I think you would see more philanthropy for them to help these people.
Yeah.
6 months later, you get to try this again. We're going to give you a second chance because now you've seen what you did and you failed. I think the second time around, you'll get more people to come into play again. I think something like that is a good program because you're giving people a chance to bring themselves up and get off what is the government tent.
I think you have to find people that want to help themselves, though.
Yes, but you might be able to create an atmosphere where some people see other people succeed.
Yeah.
And then they go, change doesn't happen fast. Welfare reform will never. Remember, you asked me if we were going to be one of the questions we had?
Oh, yeah.
Welfare reform was my first thing I talked about.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the most important things we really got to do. But if people see people succeed, they're liable to say, why did you succeed? 1 gets 2, 2 gets 4, 4 gets 8.
Yeah.
It multiplies. It happens slowly, but it does multiply. And I firmly believe that would be the case. And then, we're going to have to deal with immigration reform in that aspect too. Because those people have to be able to go out and get those jobs and not be taken in by people that are working for under wage because they're illegal in the country right now. Okay, enough of my platform.
Yeah, but it's interesting. I mean, I think so many times you can look at this country where laws are passed with the best of intentions and the worst of possible outcomes. And that happens all the time. As soon as you set and you start catering to the least common denominator, you establish rules that again, like you were saying, a 23-hour work week because otherwise I'll lose my benefits. Well, now you have a disincentive for work. And so people know as soon as I knew when I worked at a gas station, work overnight at a gas station sometime.
Ooh.
I was poor than dirt, worked overnight from 10 to 6 in the morning, and I knew people who were having kids just to get extra checks.
Actually, my daughter worked overnights at the gas station for a while.
I know people who have kids so they can stay on government programs.
Yep. So that leaves you on the plantation.
Well, and I think
Let's not use the word plantation around here.
It
is somewhat true.
I
understand what you're saying, though. It's a difficult word. It is.
Yeah, you know what's funny? It's truly funny, but I remember at work, there's a guy who he's a member of the organization that I work for, and he's in Virginia, and they've got I don't know. It's I don't know if it's like a nut company or something like that. But every Christmas he's sending a basket of plantation products over. And I just remember every time I would see him, I'd be like, God damn it, he can't pick something else. Just the word drives me bananas. But sometimes it's the most apt descriptor of a system, or because a lot of times, especially with our system of having people on welfare or other systems like it is kind of like a plantation.
It's not designed to get them off of it. It's designed to keep them
difficult
on.
to get off.
I mean, look at the history of what has happened, especially to Africans Americans in this country. You went from literally slavery on plantations, and very few people in this country actually owned slaves or could afford them. The vast majority did not.
Exactly.
But then you went from that to crop sharing situations where they literally just robbed you blind to work the land, and you were paid, but it was just stolen from you because you could never get ahead. Then you went to Jim Crow laws and segregation and just said, we're going to stay all this all together.
Yeah.
And then finally, you get to a point where you think there's voting rights and all those kind of things that's going to make a big difference. That's been a generation and a half.
Yeah.
And people look at it and go, I can't believe this hasn't, everything's fair. I always make an analogy. It's like literally beating the shit out of a kid forever. And then just going, fight's over.
Yeah.
We're even now.
Yeah, we're
it's
right.
all good.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, it's just moved. Now it's, there were slaves on plantations. Then slavery was abolished, and like you say, then there was sharecropping, and there was kind of the Jim Crow system in the South.
Sharecropping was going on at the same time as slavery.
Yeah, well, I should say
it really came into vogue afterwards.
Yeah, right. But after, during and after the Jim Crow period is when our prison complex grew so much because. Which another amazing documentary on Netflix, 13th, talks about the 13th Amendment, and of course talking about the abolishment of slavery, except for those persons in prison. And so watching the shift from slaves.
We still need to get your Netflix up and going.
Yeah, slave to imprisoned persons, and now there are more blacks in prison than there ever were slaves.
Which has a lot to do with the type of prohibition, and it's a prohibition on drugs, which is no different than a prohibition on alcohol in a way, because they pit out all those laws. If you get busted with crack, you get busted with coke, you get busted with dope. When I got into my original trouble, and I'll be the first to tell you, it was white privilege that I got run out of town. If I hadn't got run out of town, I was doing 7 years.
Yeah.
But in 13...
Where would a day's life been?
Oh, yeah, had you not
if I had done
break.
7 years, would I be sitting here today?
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. My chances I wouldn't say maybe not, but my chances would have been very,
very different. Yeah.
Very slim.
In 13th, though, they talk about how different the prison term or lack of it was for cocaine versus crack, because cocaine was white.
Oh yeah.
And it was
crack
it was a
black.
classy drug.
Yeah, sure.
And it was,
Absolutely.
So yeah.
I think it goes beyond drugs. I think at some point, and I do not think this is a white problem only, I'm going to say to a large degree, this is also an African American problem, a Hispanic problem. You have to build an economic infrastructure. You have to build an economic infrastructure in some of these communities. And there have been a lot of programs that are designed to do that. Some of them backfire horrifically, which in my opinion led to the 2008 housing bubble.
Yeah.
But until you're, and it goes beyond drugs, until you're able to find a way to truly build an economic infrastructure in these communities, the problem's just going to escalate. And that's not just a white problem, it is literally neighborhoods coming together, as we've talked about before. Like, I can't imagine living in a neighborhood where I wouldn't turn in my neighbor for shooting somebody. It happens all the time. 2 miles from here.
Oh yeah,
I'm
shoot.
like,
I mean, like I
God,
said,
like at some point.
being from where I'm from, people do
Yeah,
not
it's like-
just turn over somebody. Most of the times they think the streets will handle it, and sometimes the streets will handle it. But the problem is, you have these people that are basically trapped in a war zone. You know, some are too scared to talk. You know, and the ones that aren't too scared to talk, you know, they're constantly thinking of the possibility of retaliation.
Absolutely, but this is where neighborhoods and communities that band together actually outweigh. If you ever look at just, honestly, if you just took the numbers and said, if we banded together and actually outfought the criminals.
Ivanhoe neighborhood here in Kansas City is one of those examples where the Ivanhoe neighborhood has kept some watch. You know, I go back once again, you know, where I mentioned in a former podcast, is that I would love to see a lot of the artists and even actors and athletes saying snitches get stitches is a bad deal. I really think that they would come out and start saying things. They would start changing a thought process after a while. Now they risk a lot of cred in their communities doing that.
Yeah, a lot of times people do.
But
I think you're right.
Those are their heroes. That's who they look up to.
I think it starts at a neighborhood level, and I'll give you a great example of one that happened here locally, which is when the Waldo rapist was running around. The entire Waldo area got together and formed neighborhood watches at night. They would all take turns. You'd sign up for shifts, and you would monitor the neighborhoods, looking for anybody suspicious that, you know.
Yeah. But what's the demographic in the Waldo area?
It's actually a fairly mixed neighborhood, to be perfectly honest. Because there's a lot of Brookside's not, but Waldo certainly is.
Okay.
And it was a very mixed neighborhood, and it was all kinds of people who came out and got together and said, this one is killing our property value.
Oh, yeah.
Like, God, I mean, this is just being driven down.
Yeah, don't mess with people's property value.
Try to sell your house in Waldo at that point when there's a Waldo rapist running around.
Yeah, I will say this before I go to the next thing, because we're tightening up on time. But you know, when you're, you know, and this is not to denigrate or pile on police, but I will say this: in a lot of you know, poor and underprivileged neighborhoods, the response time for the police is like, it's horrific. You know, if you do, because like my grandparents, they would have called police on anybody. You know, they know, look, there was a vacant lot next door. They saw you in there loitering. They looked like people were doing hand to hands or whatever. They were calling the police. The problem is, if the police don't show up for 15 minutes, you know, that, you know, like, that's the problem. Like, the activity is either over, or they then do the incredibly stupid thing of knocking on your door. You called the police? What's going on? Like, now the entire block's going, that's the snitch house.
Or they'll show up with sirens and lights on, and you can hear it coming a mile away, and they just take off.
Exactly.
I know 3 different cases where that happened with the Waldo rapist, where people actually called because they had a break-in in their house. So he would break in a basement window or do things like that and get in, and they called the police, and all of a sudden you hear all these sirens and shit like that coming on the street. And if you're the Waldo rapist sitting in a house and you're getting the fuck out of there, and you got a 3-minute head start.
Exactly.
Well, sometimes the police really don't want to engage these people either.
And that's
especially nowadays.
And that's definitely.
And it depends on if you get that one cop and one in. I don't know what the statistic would be. Brian's not here.
Get that one bad kid and one bad cop, and they interact, and like I said,
or they don't interact.
If they pulled out the bong and got high together, they'd be a lot better off.
We went to the American Royal Friday, and the state troopers were at every entrance of the Speedway. Not a single one of them looked up when we drove by, when there was traffic jams, when we were trying to cross traffic. I mean, I'm really not sure why they were there, because at one point, I think Mario saw one of them sitting in his car reading a book. And it's just like, what's the point?
Well, they wouldn't let me take a left turn. I was trying to go to my buddy's house. I had to go all the way down.
Like if you're just there to collect the overtime, give it to somebody else that wants to do the job.
They're as corrupt as anybody else.
Yeah.
I mean,
now the few cops that I know personally aren't, but
the many that
once
I know
again,
are, and I know that most of them are on the take. They will overlook a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah.
I used to literally give bags of money to cops when we had the gambling ring in at the gas station. They would come in, it would be wrapped up as a sandwich. Everybody knew not to open it.
Right.
They would order a pastrami sandwich from it, and you give it to them, and they go on their way.
There you go.
Here's your pastrami sandwich
that
for
wasn't
the
abnormal at all. It was not even remotely abnormal.
Once again,
Friday night.
That makes me really sad.
Being from where I'm from, I know that is exactly true. If you have enough.
They're coming to get you now.
Speaking of, we've been talking bad about them. Here they come.
I got 5 minutes to run. That shit.
Yeah, really, that's the truth. All right, so some actually much deeper conversation than I was even expecting, and I'm really glad that we got a chance to delve a little bit into some of these issues. So I want to get to something, a couple of things real quick that are a lot lighter.
Okay, before we finish this, can I ask you just one quick question?
Yeah, please.
Because I think you're the most interesting experience on this, and this is something I would never ever be able to recreate in my life.
Yeah.
I dislike cops because I think I've seen them. I've seen them on the move, and I distrust them.
Right.
But generally, those were like financial payoffs and money shit like that. Coming from Chicago and being an African American, what is the true level of distrust for police in a larger metropolitan?
Oh, it is wild. It is
ridiculous.
Wild distrust. For example,
Are you going to tell the cars from the restaurant?
I actually got 2 stories, and that's one of them. So when I was younger, just literally walking to the corner store, we were in the middle of the block. On both sides of the apartment building we lived in were vacant lots. Across the street was a vacant lot. You cut through the lot, and literally you cut through the lot, there's the store.
Right.
And
there was a trail there. You walked every day, right?
Well, every day. At least 5 times. Especially if I was walking with a friend. We got jammed up against the wall. What are you doing? What are you doing? Patting us down, talking really reckless, and not patting us down, like smacking us down, really.
Right.
And so the reason I've definitely been pulled over for driving while black several times.
A DWB?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Oh, that's it.
Dude, DWB is like a fairly common expression.
Every time we talk about stuff like this, it just makes me sad.
Yeah.
Well, it's a reality.
It is, and I understand that, but it doesn't mean I have to like it.
Yeah. So I remember one time I was a teenager, and it was me. I look back on the situation now and laugh because I'm just like, whatever. So it was me, my boy Marshall, who's black, my boy Marcello, who's black, my boy Les, who was white, and my boy Mike was white. So I'm driving, Mike's in the passenger seat, the other three guys are in the back. We're looking for this house party. And we're in a suburb that we don't live in, but we heard about this party. We're looking for the place.
Which one were you in?
Oh yeah, so we got
Which neighborhood?
Lansing.
Okay.
Lansing. So it's a south suburb.
Right.
So we get pulled over, and the cop says, and for anybody out there who was offended by such language, please excuse me, but I can't tell the story without it. Cop pulls me over and asks for license and registration and all of that. So I tell Mike, go in the glove box, get my insurance card out, blah, blah, blah.
You don't get it.
No, I don't reach for it. I say, Mike, in fact, I say it with a cop to hear. Mike, go in the glove box, my insurance and everything is in there, so I can give it to the officer. He goes in, he gets it, hands it to me, I hand it to the officer. He looks at it, he looks at it, he shines the flashlight in the car, looking to see who's in there, and I'm thinking, okay, this dick,
No,
but
that's better.
but so then, how they've got the comm on their shoulder, and he literally goes, like, I want you to run a play for me and give him the play. He said, yeah, because I've got 3 niggas, a white guy, and a possible in the car, and I want to make sure. And Mike, who's sitting next to me, he goes, did he say 3 niggas, a white guy, and a possible? And I'm like, Mike, shut the fuck up. Wait, because you're the possible. Because Mike is the blackest white guy I've ever met in my life.
This is why Mario tells me often that I'm going to get him shot one day because of my road rage. And I'm like, I didn't yell at him. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't hand gesture. Well, I yelled at him, but they don't know what I'm saying.
Right. I guess
Coming from Chicago.
Yeah. So the funny thing, the funny thing is, it's funny and it's sad, is that as a black person in America, those types of situations are way more commonplace than anybody wants to admit. And like I say, I've definitely been pulled over more times than I care to mention, especially when you're younger, which is the problem of why there's so much mistrust. At this point in my life, I'm not getting pulled over like that for anything. But when you're young and spry, you get pulled over a lot for absolutely nothing. And they want to just check everything, roust you about anything.
Probable cause. All those
I think about
that tail light is out.
Well,
so
I can promise you, in Southeast Texas, it doesn't matter what color you are. If you're young and you look punk, you're gonna get your ass pulled over. And particularly one night, we got pulled over in Silsbee, Texas, and loaded us into the cop car, took us to the local judge in his furniture store. And he basically looked at it and said, pull out your wallets and show me how much money you have. And whatever money, we were going up to a party in Jasper, and ever how much money we had, because we had beer in the car. Of course, they took our beer. I'm sure they drank it, and took all of our money. And Mike and I looked at each other and just said, might as well go back home now. I got no beer, I got no money.
You got enough gas to get home.
Yeah, about all you might have is gas enough to get home.
So, it's going to happen any place, any time. Just depends what you look like at that age. And I look like a teenage degenerate, so, I was what I was.
Yeah.
I would say it happens disproportionately to black kids.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, I was a Catholic school kid, the whole
I have
nine
friends
yards.
here that
You know, and
all the time.
I'm like, I had friends who probably should have got pulled over all the time, but you know, it happens to the best and worst of us. You know?
Right.
There's a rule of thumb in my world, like when they want to look in your car, the answer is no. When they want to look in your trunk, the answer is no. I'm not getting out of the car unless you give me some reason why
I need to get out.
Why I have to explain why you need me to get out of the car first.
Mm-hmm. But see, I think that kind of goes back to what you were just asking. Like, without really thinking about it, they're going to give you the answers.
Yeah.
If Mario were to say the same thing, it would be a different conversation. And especially in Chicago.
I would Chicago. I would absolutely definitely agree. I think in Kansas City, I would definitely.
I think depending on, once again, who the cop is.
And I'll tell you bizarrely, like
who the cop?
I know a lot of lawyers, and they say strangely,
there
the
are
worst
people.
place to go is Fairway and Prairie Village. Worst cops around. And they will just beat the living shit out of you for nothing. They're just looking for
looking for a fight.
So it's interesting.
Yeah. All right. So on a much lighter note, the Cubs are going to Game 6 of the World Series, ladies and gentlemen. We gotta get a round of applause for the Cubs going to Game 6 of the World Series. Whether or not you are a fan of the Cubs, I, of course, being from Chicago, this is a very big deal for me because the Cubs haven't won a World Series since 1908, haven't been to the World Series since 1945. This, to me, feels like it had to feel, and of course I was here, but it had to feel for a native Kansas Cityan just a year or two ago when the Royals were just tearing it up. And so right now, yes, I would love for the Cubs to take it home. I think Cleveland already got their championship for the year. I would love for the Cubs to take it home.
Being a Red Sox fan, I have a very important point to make.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Who's your general manager of the Cubbies? Theo Epstein.
Yes.
True.
All right. Who's the manager for the Indians? Terry Francona. Mike Napoli was also a Red Sox. All right.
Yeah.
Now, those are the same people that orchestrated the 2004-2006 World Series championships for the Red Sox,
Yes, they
right?
did. Yes, they did. Which is one of the reasons that I'm feeling so good about this particular year, this particular team, because because they do have a squad around them that has taken a team all the way to a team that didn't seem like they would get to the show all the way to winning the show.
Bada bing.
So, whether or not they win, I'm super happy and super proud that they've even gotten there.
I'm glad they won one in Chicago.
But
could you imagine if they got swept there? Oh God, that'd been the worst thing that ever happened.
This series would have been done.
Oh yeah.
But having said that, this has been my least favorite World Series ever, and I will explain why.
Yes.
One, I think it's the most exciting. I've loved it.
Yeah.
But if Chicago wins, I find that to be the end of a remarkable story. Like the 108-year drought or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I guess it is 108 years. Is part of what makes the Cubs the lovable Cubs.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so as soon as that's lost, it's kind of like, okay, that's one of the coolest stories in baseball that's now gone. Because every year...
It's only cool if you're not in Chicago and a Cubs fan.
I get it, but I mean, like, it really is the...
But I do understand what you're saying.
It is the end of a weird, cool, fascinating story. And I also have, obviously being in the AL Central, I have no love for Cleveland, but beyond that, I feel like it diminishes what the Royals were able to do over the last couple of years, which is the argument used to always be big money baseball will always win and the game sucks and yada yada, and now all of a sudden you have Kansas City winning and now Cleveland's winning with these lower payrolls and all this stuff, and now anybody can win. And so in a bizarre way, and I love football because anybody can win in any given year.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, it's just Chiefs were the worst to the best, and had the quickest turnaround, I guess, in NFL history that when you're from Romeo Crennel to Andy Reid.
Yeah.
But that's the nature of football. It's set up fairly. Baseball, the argument has always been it's not set up fairly, and now the excuse that small market teams can't win is gone.
Yeah, but
Like,
right. Yeah, but I said the era of Moneyball has definitely changed the way baseball is played.
Well,
And
the Red Sox, they beat the curse of the Bambino, right?
yes.
So even if the Cubbies don't win, at least they neutered the goat. The goat may still be there, but he don't have any balls no more.
Okay. All right. I'll take that.
So
I'll take
the goat is at least neutered.
That's
take
legit.
it.
That's
I'll
legit.
take that. All right.
You're on the goat. I do
Okay.
love going there.
I'll take it. All right. So lastly, on the last podcast, I mentioned that it's kind of scaring me because it seems as if the American electorate and politics are heading toward the reality of a film that I saw called Idiocracy, and I just saw online that that the rentals and I can't remember if it was Netflix, but whatever services that Idiocracy is on is jumping through the roof because a lot of people had never seen it and they're starting to hear about this movie and how closely this is resembling our reality right now. And I just thought it was funny that several times actually in this year that we've been doing the podcast, I've mentioned Idiocracy, and now it's starting to get more widely viewed and more widely scrutinized because people are going, what the hell is going on? This shit is scary, man.
For 12 weeks.
It is scary.
Yeah.
$1 billion to get elected.
That's scary.
I mean, they're not. Brock had even more than that. President Obama had even more than that. They're not going to break his record, but it's going to be dang close. $1 billion to get elected. That's idiocracy. That totally destroys what we think about what should be done to get somebody elected.
Absolutely.
In my mind.
I don't think it does, and I really don't. And I don't think money plays nearly as large a part in it as it does. I definitely understand the point. In the general election, if you looked at it, Trump was by no means the most well-funded candidate, still won the primary. While Hillary was the most funded candidate, and you would have thought she would have gone on. It's interesting. There's a certain point where I think it mediates itself out.
Median got elected so they could turn around and beat him down.
Well, maybe,
somewhat.
Maybe not, but I
They wanted him.
I don't think it was nearly that. I don't know that that's the explanation. I really think that when you're doing these primaries, you're appealing to rabid voters.
Yes.
And one, the turnout for
On either
primaries
side
is exceptionally low, and you promise all kinds of stupid shit just to get your base out to vote for you.
Well,
and that doesn't require a lot of money.
They also proved that a lot of Trump's, he didn't need it because he was getting free media attention.
Oh, he got a ton of it.
So he didn't
got
have
ton
to
of it.
pay
Like I
for
said,
I would agree, but
they got him out there, and so they could turn around. Certain media got him out there so they could turn around and say, "Now we got a show.
Yeah.
Now we got a show."
listen, everybody realizes I'm
can't deny that.
entertainment, but I also would believe that they did more debates in this election than any other time in history. I think for the people that watched them, which are primarily rabid, hardcore political voters, when you're at that point, it would have been just as easy to vote for a Rubio or a Cruz or something else. And they didn't carry the day. They didn't have the personality.
Yeah.
They lost based on Bill Clinton should never have been elected. He was the governor of Arkansas, which is a failing state in every way. But he didn't have that much money back then, but he had the charisma to win it.
Yeah.
And you have Ross Perot come in, who's just a crazy motherfucker, and take 20% of the vote.
With big ears.
I mean, it was a nuts time. And I think now is an equally nuts time. You have this guy who can draw media attention,
And the
which
voice.
negates money.
I'm Ross Perot. You know, he's just had the most horrible voice in the
That
world.
was the first election I was able to vote in.
But they Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter certainly didn't have
What?
very much money.
Wasn't our first election? Yeah.
Yeah. It's 90. Yeah, 90. That 92 election. Yeah, that should have been.
Yeah.
It's not the money that kills me. It is just literally the fact that, I think he came off with this bizarrely engaging, rabid way of talking to people that got them excited and wound up, and that's kind of what happened. Media or not, money or not, he was great at riling up people, and he still does right now.
Well,
Clinton?
I was
I think
just
Clinton was-
amazed
Clinton, is that who you're talking about?
Clinton was amazing at that,
But
and
who were you just
not
talking
just
about?
making people angry. Donald Trump, but
Oh.
I do think that Clinton also had that same kind of thing where he was able to bizarrely connect with people in a way that, for whatever that specific period of time was, they needed to be communicated to.
Yeah.
And Clinton would have lost that election had it not been for Ross Perot. I mean, every poll says Perot stole Bush voters. And that kind of thing.
No,
so,
I definitely. To this day,
he never won a majority. He never won a majority of the electoral vote.
Mm-hmm. To this day, the only
That's interesting.
subject that Bush Senior just doesn't want to talk about. He's just like, he can talk about anything.
Although they're great friends.
Except him and Perot.
Oh, no. Perot, he hated.
Oh, yeah.
But Clinton and Bush
Clinton
travel
Bush.
together all the
Yeah,
time. They
Clinton
raise
Bush.
money together. They do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, he didn't have any real, and I think, to put the last point on, because I know we need to stop, because today is Halloween, and at least one person here on the panel is going to go home and pass out some candy to some kids, like a responsible good adult. Good adult's going to be. But I will say this. I think that was the last of the civil elections where you had HW and Clinton, who have become really good friends over time. Whereas
Look at the younger Bush and Michelle Obama. They're exceptionally good friends.
but that took a while. That took a while to get to the point where the Obamas and W were like, they could be in the same place at the same time, but I think it was the last maybe 2 years that you actually started seeing, they've grown affection for each other.
I think there were two things that happened. One, George W. Bush, the younger one, never publicly commented on anything that Obama did.
Yes.
Which I think was exceptionally smart. He said, listen, I'm not the president anymore. I don't deserve to weigh in.
Very smart, very classy, actually.
He was also the one that passed the law and funded the new African American Museum in Washington, which they worked exceptionally closely on, and became friendly through that. Mm-hmm. Also, he couldn't run for re-election, so maybe it's slightly unfair. But you got to keep remembering that Obama ran against everything that Bush did. So there were a lot of personal remarks that about the quality of his presidency, et cetera, et cetera. But it is interesting that I think those two families, and I think a lot of the more traditional families were like that, where they just said, listen, politics is politics. It is what it is. You got to have a thick skin, and then when it's done,
right?
Yes, you go lick your wounds, and then you go back and serve your country.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think once you've been president, you understand that you're president of the country, not president of your party.
Yeah, your party, right?
And I find that to be an interesting kind of a cool thing. I love the tradition, and they published the note, which I thought was fascinating. That I think it was H.W. Bush left for
Clinton.
Obama. Oh yeah, for
Clinton.
when he came in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I thought that was one of the most genuine, sincere notes, and I have a feeling that a lot of those letters are like that.
Yeah.
A lot of them are kept private because they're private moments.
Yeah.
The only person who didn't do that was frickin' Eisenhower because he's a dick, but everybody else was really cool.
Yeah. Now let's remember that Clinton stole the China. That's all I'm saying. There's a lot of difference there. The Clinton stole the China.
And they left with quick crash.
I'm just saying.
But I think
there's a lot of difference there.
Listen, I think George.
I don't think the Obamas are going to steal the China. I don't see them doing that. I think they got a lot more class than that.
I think they're two of the classiest people in the office.
Yeah, I don't think they're running off with the China or leaving the place trashed.
I mean, I would. If you're looking back at modern presidents, I put them up there with Barbara and George Bush. I thought they clearly had a lot of respect for the office.
Yeah.
Obama's clearly have a lot of respect for the office. More than that, I think he has a lot of respect for his legacy.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know. It's interesting. I feel like he, more than any other modern president, has thought more about what his legacy is going to end up being, because I think he felt the added responsibility of being
the first black president, right? Yeah.
So, anyway, it's interesting.
Well, with all that being said, I'm going to end this podcast in the way I end all podcasts, and that is with the toast that started this all for me. And I want to thank everybody for being a part of Loft Party Podcast. And something I meant to mention on last podcast, but you being the listeners out there can see for yourself that last episode was episode 30.
Wow!
So yeah, we have
awesome.
we have actually recorded more than 30, and we've had a couple of technical mishaps, and of course there's been a couple of weeks there have been holidays, or a couple of weeks there have been some sicknesses. There's been a few things there, but for at least 30 weeks we've been trying to be the round voice of reason, where a group of people can get together, not necessarily agree, but we can talk, share a cigar, and share a drink. So with that, the toast, as always, to good times with good people.